All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome in another Awesemo NBA Deeper Dive. We've got a 6-game slate tonight that will get through everything. And myself, Eytan Shander at Shander Shows, I could follow along. Of course, Terry McBride is in the house. And normally, Terry, this would be the time in which I would say you can follow Terry on Twitter, but I botched it last week. So you've got like 6 different handles here. I don't know which one is the go-to. First and foremost, it's a pleasure, my friend. I know your
Definitely.
Knicks are on right now, so everybody's going to be as patient as possible with you over the next hour. And second, you got to get the Twitter for me right, so I make sure I tag the right Terry.
So I'm on Twitter at DigitalB21, but more importantly, it's good to be here with you in real life, or at least, this version of real life that we're doing these days. Definitely a lot of fun. Should be a good slate to talk through here. But yeah, that's where you guys can find me on Twitter. The good news is that one that you gave out last week, I'm pretty sure I also have that one. I just don't remember the password for or anything for it. So anybody who followed me there, don't expect much, but that's still me.
At least it wasn't a different Terry McBride in Alaska somewhere who tweeting about something so far away from DFS. I was in the right ballpark, which is everything.
Yeah, you didn't send anybody off, chasing down some crazy rabbit hole of whichever side they don't believe in of all these different debates that we have in life these days.
Perfect.
How's that for walking the line?
I love it. I love it. It's not bad, actually. I like how you snuck that in there. Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. Again, if you're watching the Knicks and Clippers alongside us, we appreciate it. You want to like, you want to subscribe, you want to make sure that you are in tune with everything that we do here on Awesemo.com so you never miss anything as we lead you up to lineups locking tonight for the 7 o'clock slates that will tip off. And just looking at it big picture, there's going to be an obvious name right there at the top, right? And Luka, and then just kind of taking us through how you approach this slate tonight, big picture, then we'll go in game by game.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of value pieces in play, of course, just looking at the board across the different sites between the guys in New Orleans, the potential guys in Detroit that we're going to get on this board. We've got some value pieces in play in that just low-end teams playing against each other in what should be a frenetic, high-scoring paced game in Minnesota and Orlando. So there's just pieces all over the board in this one. I do like the idea of paying up to a couple of these stars. I think it's going to be a Starsy, Scrubsy kind of construction again. Probably going way high scoring again, like we've seen recently. So yeah, I think it's another one we're going to have to find the right value plays to lock in there and just kind of buckle in and hope that we've locked the rest of the lineup the right way on the right star players, because I think it's going to be another wild one, even with just 6 games on the slate.
Well, let's start with, and as we mentioned, right there at the top, Mavs, Cavs. It's going to be a big line looking at it, or -11, depending on where you are, odd shopper with the latest. And on top of that, we know Cleveland, right? Their season has been over. And now Mavs clearly down Porzingis, but Luka is right there at the top. And I imagine that, especially comparing to the rest of the slate, Terry, you're probably going to be in favor of running Luka a lot more than not.
Yeah, for sure. He's drawing a lot of ownership on both sites, over 30%, but it's one of those slates where it doesn't really so much matter that the field is getting to him. And that rate's actually trailing his rate at which we find him optimal on FanDuel, and then just right around that number on DraftKings. So there's plenty of room to get to Luka here. As long as you can afford it without sacrificing significant pieces of your roster, it makes a ton of sense. Looking at this game individually, he's like triple anybody else on the FanDuel board in terms of how frequently he's coming up optimal. He's got like 6 times as optimal as anybody else on the DraftKings slate. So yeah, fire away with Luka in terms of if you're looking for a play from this game. You mentioned with Porzingis out, the Mavs have kind of been rolling, even with Porzingis missing time. Luka's been carrying them, and then they've been getting somewhat unpredictable contributions from guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Richardson, Tim Hardaway, Jalen Brunson. If Maxi Kleber's out there at min price on FanDuel, he probably gains a little bit of interest. So there's pieces on the Dallas side of this one. It's just they're a little bit unreliable, a little bit unpredictable where it's going to come from. All those guys are below fantasy point per minute kind of contributors and priced in that fair mid-range area. So Dallas becomes interesting after Luka.
Yeah, Kleber listed as questionable right now, and even playing through the Q tag, whether or not how many minutes he may get, I wonder, just because of how cheap he's going to be, 3,600 on DraftKings. Willie Cauley-Stein now becoming an option simply because somebody's going to get minutes down low up front.
Yeah, and we'll see Willie probably pick up a share of those minutes that Alex currently has on Maxi Kleber if Kleber's ruled out. Right now, we've got him at a 26.2 minute projection, which is around like his full complement of minutes. So that's expecting a full run, and he's not really exploding up the board in terms of his value marks or anything, even as a min-price guy. So I think it's just a matter of him being around the 0.68 fantasy point contributor in a relatively regular role, maybe a little bit enhanced given that he'd be filling in for Porzingis there. But if he's not there, I think we do see a nice little bump in Willie Cauley-Stein, who is already at a 12-point projection in just 13 minutes. He's a 0.86 fantasy point per minute contributor, so a better per minute rate. We could see that bump up. We could see an interesting number out of Willie Cauley-Stein, but I'm not sure I like it anymore for 4,300 as compared to 3,500 dead minimum for Maxey. It would be in play as kind of more of a mix and match, I think, depending on what that news, how that news breaks down.
All right, I see. We'll get to Curiosity Seeker super chat just one sec, but just on that same vein, you mentioned Finney Smith. And I saw a player prop earlier in the day over 10.5 points. Thought that would be, especially if you're looking at somebody to kind of slip in there for point productivity, looking at what he's been able to do, maybe even 5 of the last 5 games. Is there you mentioned him as maybe an outside option. Do you still like that?
Yeah, I would have pieces of those guys. I would just kind of take them in shares as I got them in crunches. There's nobody that I'm really going out of my way for, just given the boom score probabilities, the likelihood of these guys putting a ceiling on their scores at these prices. So like Tim Hardaway Jr. is fine to mix and match some shares of him into your lineup. You're most likely just getting that 27 FanDuel 29 point DraftKings point performance out of him. If he cracks the 30-point mark, yeah, he's going to have nice upside for us. It's just less than likely that he's going to get there. One of these guys will probably deliver over what we have for him as a median projection, approaching a ceiling game on the score. It's just anybody's guess whether it's going to be DFS, Richardson, Timmy Hardaway, possibly Jalen Brunson out of that group.
All right, super chat from Curiosity Seeker for you, Terry. Tough slate, guys. Tonight worth stacking. Sacramento and Oklahoma City. Sacramento, decimated still. De'Aaron Fox, right? And then also with OKC, if somebody's going to be out there, we just may not know who. Ty Jerome is back, it looks like, though.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to put the label stacking on it, because that kind of implies that we like these teams, we like these offenses, and this is like a go-to offense for us, where I think we're just going to pick up value pieces from that game where, yeah, if we have a few pieces of either one of those teams at low salaries fitting into those value roles, I think it's perfectly fine, depending on, where you're getting production and how the news breaks down around guys being in and out. But just looking at the overall board, that is the second highest total that we've got. It's 223. It's not like it's a massive total. We've got the Timberwolves and the Magic, like I mentioned before, out at 231.5. And then everybody else is within a handful of points of that 223. So it's not like they're playing in an outlier game for point scoring in general from what Vegas is seeing. There's a 9-point spread on it. It's one that could get out of hand, and you could lose track of, the upside if you're stacking like all starter type players. So I think it's more about the value plays from that one.
All right. As far as our first game here, let's go back to the other side of it. And, right there at the top for Cleveland is going to be a pretty hefty price, I would imagine, at 9,000 on DraftKings for Colin Sexton, where I just don't know, Terry, listening to you, if that's going to be enough of a return, right? Paying 9,000 for Sexton.
Yeah, no, that is too high a price for Colin Sexton on the DraftKings slate. I think he loses almost all of his utility, almost all of his upside. I like that you can move him between the guard spots. If you're just looking for like lock and load 36.5 DraftKings points is probably what you're going to get out of him today. There's not going to be anybody really on him, but he just doesn't have that upside at that price. There are better ways to spend our money, both in terms of paying for different people at the point guard or shooting guard spot, and then using that $9,000 just more effectively across other positions. So I just don't see him on the DraftKings slate. He's much more in play on FanDuel, where he costs 77 as a shooting guard option, but he's getting attention. He's getting a little bit over-owned over there. I don't love the Sexton play on either site really today. He's more on the board, like I said, on FanDuel, but he's like a mix and match kind of a guy there. Not a ton of significant upside. And I'd never really like getting to a play like that when he's already over-owned by the field, and probably will trend toward more ownership as we get closer to lock.
This team is just outright miserable. So I understand that there might not be, but look, we've seen it with Houston, Minnesota. There are other teams, even maybe every now and again, like Detroit, where you can find a cheaper play, especially if you've already built and spent elsewhere. I don't even know if there's an option here with Cleveland to slide in somebody low cost that could even complete a lineup, Terry.
Yeah, last I saw, we're waiting on that Kevin Love news.
Yeah, still questionable, right?
Yeah, so if we pick up those 27 minutes and we distribute, 3 or 4 of them, maybe Jared Allen picks up a little bit more, and then some of them trickle down to like the Dean Wades, Isaiah Hartensteins of the world. Those guys could pick up some value, some utility, given the fact they're 3,700, 3,600 on FanDuel, 3,631 on DK. Look where the minutes land and make an educated decision that way in terms of just gauging it off the boom bust board. If you guys out there are desperate to roster some Cavaliers, but unless one of these guys really skyrockets, I don't really see it. I think Cedi Osman is somewhat in play and would probably pick up a little, maybe 2-3 minute boost as well, just in the front court if Kevin Love is out. He's been playing somewhat effectively, 0.81 fantasy points per minute for the season. You've got it here. He's 127 minutes since the deadline without Kevin Love, Larry Nance, and Darius Garland down the floor, who will all be out tonight. He's been at 0.97 points per minute since the trade deadline. So he is a little bit interesting, particularly if we give him another couple of minutes at the price. That would probably be the Cav that I would look to in that situation. Sexton, by the way, since I've got it here in front of me now, 0.99 fantasy points per minute on the season. But since the deadline, 126 minutes without that same combination of teammates on the floor, only 0.88. So he is just mispriced on that DraftKings slate for that kind of production. And it's asking a lot for that production at 77 on FanDuel. Makes me like him even less.
All right, let's move to the Pelicans in Charlotte now. And you mentioned minutes and trying to figure out where all these minutes would go with Kevin Love. Well, we may have one even more, right? If you add Brandon Ingram in here, doesn't look like he's going to go. Still with the Q, I see, not officially out, but doubtful right now. We already know Zion is out tonight. So I imagine just looking at it, Lonzo Ball, 8,400 becomes a little more appealing just because his number isn't that as high as maybe expected with the given usage rate with the other two guys out.
Yeah, it's a nice spot for Lonzo playing against his younger brother in a game that matters for both teams. So I expect a pretty good game here. Even without Zion, without Ingram, I don't expect Ingram in this one either. Even without those guys on the floor for New Orleans, they've got enough in this lineup that I think they'll keep it competitive, make a nice game of it, and it matters for both teams. I think it's a good spot for Lonzo. 8,000 on FanDuel keeps him nicely in play at the point guard. He's owned appropriately by the field, but I think it's a spot you can kind of exceed. 8,400, similar story on the DraftKings slate, and he's got a little bit more ownership relatively on DK than he does on FanDuel, but I think it's a spot I would still be willing to press beyond the fields. He was second in the last game when Zion was out. He was second on the team in usage at 28.4%, which was second to Jackson Hayes, who played less, saw 28.8% usage in that game. Ball scored 18 real points, was 6 of 18 shooting, but just 4 of 13 from 3. So if he hits a couple more of those threes, that could take a nice little jump in fantasy point production. So I think there's a nice upside story there for Ball. I like both Ball brothers actually in this one.
All right, so let's look as we continue to kind of explore, as we mentioned, Ingram out. We'll just assume, right, that he's out. Zion, we knew
I think that's
already.
It.
Alexander Walker seems like a good play here, right? He's expected to be back, missing a bunch of games. There's going to be a lot of minutes. So unless there's a minutes restriction, seems to be like he could be out there for a 6,600 I see on DraftKings, Terry.
So that's what I'm really curious about. Alex has him at 17 minutes right now, which has got him basically off the board. Right.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the exact right response. Yeah. Wow. That was the noise I made when I saw it.
I stand corrected, sir. I apologize.
But it depends, right? I'm not sure that that's based on news other than we know he's coming back from being out. I think this is the first time he's played in about a month. So it's been a while. He's appropriately priced for around what he was doing. 0.96 fantasy points per minute for the season. Yeah, given 30 minutes, I think he'd be very productive. I think that would be around the right price. I just don't know that we can rely on the 30 minutes. And then where it concerns me is around guys like Najee Marshall, who we've got kind of projected for an upside day at just 4,800, 4,700 on DK. If we start to project Alexander Walker close to like 24 minutes instead of that, that's probably going to shave minutes off of a guy like Najee Marshall. It could have an impact, probably not on James Johnson and Jackson Hayes, who were splitting those front court minutes, but it could have an impact on if you're expecting anything from like a Kira Lewis out there, somebody like that. So it just depends on how those minutes shake out. But based on how we've got it right now, it actually looks like Najee Marshall would be the safest of those wing plays.
All right, so up front, Hernan Gomez has been a good play here and there, especially, for minutes and what he's been getting as a return. The expectation, I imagine, especially with the minutes up front and just productivity with Zion out, does that become an appealing play?
Again, it's another one that I'm looking for minutes on. Last time out, they split those minutes basically between James Johnson and Jackson Hayes. We saw Hayes have a nice outlier type performance game in only like 23 and a half minutes. Johnson got like 26 minutes in the front court. And then I got to pull up popcorn
24 against, I have it, 24
24
against Philly, 25, 27, 29, 24. 30 minutes last time was against the Clippers on April 26th. So he hasn't hit 30. I mean, 29 if you want to count that game against OKC. But you're right. I mean, minutes have definitely been here and there.
Yeah, so it's just about where those minutes are going in the front court. He did start that game that I was just talking about as alongside Johnson, but it just doesn't look like he was overly productive in that spot. And what concerns me is Alex seems to only have him in here for about a minute and a half, which I'm not really sure where that's coming from.
Wow.
So unless there's news that I missed, I'm just curious where we're getting that one.
Yeah, I don't see it.
But yeah, the guys in the front. Yeah, the guys in the front court I was more eyeballing, like I said, were Johnson and Hayes there. So unless I missed something on why we
got into a fight in the shoot around or something, did we miss? Did we miss something? Did he send a tweet out? Like, did we miss something in real life? I don't see any injury tag next to him.
Yeah,
so
I don't
have
sure. Yeah, I don't have news on him. I don't see anything there, and we've got Steven Adams questionable in that offense as well. So if Adams comes out, I do see a path toward minutes there, of course, for Hernan Gomez. So that's one definitely. Let's keep an eye on it as we go forward. I'm just going to Google him real quick and make sure that I didn't miss anything. But I think you're right in terms of there should be minutes there beyond what we've got listed for him. So might just be a bug, might just be something, but it also could be a bug in my brain where I'm not remembering.
No. I wonder though, you mentioned Steven Adams, right? And his tag, if in fact he's out there, is that going to be something that would then directly impact, right, Hernan Gomez minutes?
It would. Adams was missing the last game out. We just got some news that was tagged to me, so maybe News God's helping me out here. Let me see where that landed.
On the premium Slack?
Yeah, I don't know where it actually popped up though. He tagged me, but I don't know where it went. All right. So, but yeah, if Adams is out there, that would impact the overall available minutes for Hernan Gomez. He didn't play the last game, and Hernan Gomez got the 23 and a half minutes that you were talking about there. So that's one. Let's keep an eye on it as we go forward. But the preference was, like I said, that I was looking at there was with Hayes and with James Johnson in the front court.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was looking for that. There's a lot on Hernan Gomez, but this is the depths that we go to make sure that we get everything out there, all of the pieces of information that you need, no matter how deep we go. All right, you said you mentioned when we, at the start, I should say, of this game, both Ball brothers are in play tonight. So Charlotte, again, I would imagine, as we've talked about him before, is a stay away. I don't think anything really changes with Terry Rozier tonight, especially at 8,100 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think Rozier's definitely still very much in play. He looks a little bit less shiny in terms of the optimal lineup rate that we get on him in our simulations. He was a really big go-to spot earlier in the week. That's come down a little bit for this slate, but I think he's still really definitely in play. Looks like he's getting owned around level with what our expectation is for getting him in the optimal. So I wouldn't mind pushing up. It's a low raw ownership total, around 12%. I wouldn't mind pushing up beyond that on a player I expect to be doing a lot in a game that matters for his team. He's produced throughout the week. By the way, News got tagged us, and the update was that Juancho Hernan Gomez is questionable. That was from earlier this afternoon. So I missed that. That is how good the News God is. He catches everything. I just Googled it and still didn't find it while we were talking about it here. So News God on top of everything. If you're not following him, you are missing out. He is super helpful. Getting back to Rozier, He's been basically a 1.01 fantasy point per minute player in this situation, and he's kind of pricey in terms of where he lands now. But I think it makes sense on the FanDuel slate where he's only 7,000. I think it's a better play there. One that the field is on more. The field's around 30%, so basically double the ownership they are on DK. But I think it makes sense to kind of chase the field on him there. But if you're going to undercut, that's probably where I would do it. But for me, I think I'm going to be around the field on Rozier on both sides.
Is there anybody deeper here on Charlotte? Maybe Cody Zeller, if you can get 20+ minutes tonight as a play at 3,700 up front.
If you can
advantage of, I'm sorry.
If you can get that, if you can get those minutes out of him, Alex got him at like 12 and a half. And we've just been seeing them go in different directions. So a guy, he's maybe not as under the radar, but a guy who's maybe more on the board would be PJ Washington from the mid-range. 7,200 slots in, somewhat viable at the power forward in the center spot on DK. Power forward only on FanDuel, looks a little bit more relevant on the FanDuel slate for a little bit less money. I would be more interested in Zeller if we could kick him up into that like 20, 25-minute range for sure.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's move on. Nearly halfway through here, our third of 6 games tonight with Minnesota and Orlando. Reminder here to like, smash away, make sure you're subscribed to everything so you don't miss what we're doing here while we lead you up to lineups locking for the games tonight, especially the 7 o'clock tip. So you want to make sure that you are locked in, subscribed. Everything that we have are free premium tools on Awesemo Plus today that you can use for your advantage as far as building lineups. You can use all the player rankings available to you, Awesemo Plus, and just make sure you're following us on Twitter as well at Awesemo NBA. So Minnesota at Orlando, Anthony Edwards is going to be right there at the top of the productivity, but we also have Karl Anthony Towns at 10-7 I see on DraftKings. And as we've talked and trying to sponge what I can from you, Terry, and I just look across the board and wonder if I'm not going to get the expected return. Like if I'm going to pay 10-7 on DraftKings for Cat, I'm going to need 55 fantasy points, something along those lines to justify it. I don't know if I can get that from him tonight.
Yeah, so we've got him projected under that 14% boom score probability, so 5x plus 10, which would be, nicely over that. You're playing with a little fire in terms of that rate, but I think he's one of the still top center plays on the board, particularly on FanDuel, where you get him under 10,000. He's 9,800 on that slate. We're only getting one bite at the center apple. So I think it's a different play across sites. You can definitely diversify your center shares more on the DraftKings slate, where I think I want to focus a little bit into the Karl Anthony Towns play on the FanDuel site, given just kind of an overall lack of great center options. Like we've got Mo Bamba, of course, on the board as a not really even a value play anymore. He's a mid-range play now. I'm not wildly comfortable with that one, and there's going to be a ton of people on him. Then you get Andre Drummond, Jared Allen, Rashawn Holmes, who are somewhat news-dependent, somewhat minutes-dependent guys. It's really between, at the top end, Karl Anthony Towns and Nikola Vucevic, and I prefer Towns. You're getting them both around the same price. I think I come down on the Towns side of that one a little bit more. I think there's more room for upside in the highest total game of the day. And it's just it's a strong, not a strong leverage spot in terms of not a bunch of people being on him, but for what I can foresee for the relative production at the position, I think that the field is trailing where they ought to be. So it's a play I'm getting into a little bit.
Why, in your opinion, and I think I know, but I'm just curious to get a little deeper of an answer here. It looks like a lot of people are trying to outsmart the room with the 55, as I see here on Alex's Boom Bust with the ownership, at least here on DraftKings, Bamba right there at the top, over 55%, versus Cat, who's below 20, just under 19%. So I want, if it's a 14-game slate, it's a different story, right? But I wonder on a shorter slate, 6 games tonight, if you just have the majority of people saying, oh, 7,000, sure, I'd rather go there, even though you don't really have many other options outside of Cat. So I'm a little surprised that he's not a little more owned, and I wonder if it's just people trying to outsmart the room.
I think so. And we see in basketball a lot where there are fundamental building block type plays that we have to get to. And then there are guys who come out with a lot of ownership, begin to get appropriately priced, kind of the neighborhood that Bamba's creeping into here. He's still got an immense probability of coming up with a boom score on that salary. So there is still upside, still production here. 1.30 fantasy points per minute. He's been excellent through the season. He's been very strong. Since the deadline, since Vucevic left, he's been 438 minutes, put up a 1.33 fantasy point per minute rate, 18.5% of the total rebounding opportunities, 3.0 stocks per 100 possessions. He's strong for production, but he's pricey. He's popular. And I agree. I think what you said is apt there. There's probably a lot of people kind of overthinking it, overlooking the superstar with positive leverage, a higher production, where you're paying more for him, but you're not paying like what we would have thought at the beginning of the season, the delta between Karl Anthony Towns and Mo Bamba would be, right? That's particularly on FanDuel, where it's 9,800 versus 8,200.
Yes.
I mean, come on, what are we doing? What are we doing here? So yeah, Bamba's productive. He's a more productive option than he seems for name recognition level, but still at under 10K, I'm getting a Karl Anthony Towns there.
Yeah, you read my mind. Sorry, on FanDuel, and that's where I was looking at the difference with it. So beyond Cat now for Minnesota, we've got Edwards, Deangelo Russell. 83 I see on DraftKings, not a ridiculously high price for Anthony Edwards, who is just going to put up as much as he possibly can, no matter what the circumstances of these basketball games now.
Yeah, that seems pretty right. So kids maybe got to learn a little bit about being a team player in the NBA and doing all the right things. But he's at, let's see, since Deangelo Russell came back on April 5th, he's been at 1.10 fantasy points per minute. That's up from his 0.98 for the entire season. And it's up from where he was the month before Russell came back, which was 1.06. So he's seen a slight uptick since Russell came back. I was actually expecting maybe that would trend down the other way. So that's a nice little indicator there. He's not particularly sneaky. I think there's people going to be on him at appropriate levels, but he's a player I like getting to, and certainly somebody who's on the board at worst as a mix and match kind of option. The one thing I'll say is that the boom score is a little bit lower than I'd like to see, given that he's just basically fairly priced, maybe a little bit highly priced on the FanDuel slate at 88, probably pretty fairly priced given the positional utility at 83 on DK. So I probably like to play a little bit more over there where I can move him around the board like a little chess piece.
Yeah, so I'm looking, you mentioned Russell right next to him and the return of Deangelo. He's got the higher boom score really across the board, right? Oh, no, outside of Vanderbilt right there at the top, but we can get to him in a second. Just as far as the guys that maybe are at the top of when you're scrolling down on your lineups, Deangelo Russell is a pretty decent boom score when you look at what especially his price tag would be associated with.
Yeah, and he's been playing well since coming back. 1.15 fantasy points per minute over 311 minutes since April 15th, which is, decent production out of that price range. 26.1% usage in the sample, which is third behind Edwards and Towns, who were both, obviously we just talked about those guys. Over the past 15 games, he's got a 40.7% assist share with a 27.1% usage rate. So there's a lot to like there. He's passing the ball. He's not as incredibly scoring dependent as we might think of him in from our previous history with the player. So I think we can get there. I like the positional flex on DK. I think he's definitely in play on this slate. He's going to be owned. He's popular, so you're not sneaking him past anybody. But if you want to own him with the field or maybe a slight undercut, I think that's probably around appropriate. Maybe like 25% with the field at 30.
And I know that we talk about the backcourt, especially with Deangelo Russell here back, but I just wonder I don't know how big of a blowout factor this can be, despite it dropped a little bit now. I see it right at 7.5, that line there. Is Ricky Rubio in play at all at 5,200 on DraftKings for you?
Doesn't look like he's on the board very much for Alex. Alex has him at a 24.1 minute projection. So I like to see more out of him. He wasn't somebody I had really considered, just wasn't popping on in my numbers on the FanDuel slate. So I hadn't really thought through him. 5,200 for, if I was getting 30 out of Ricky Rubio at that price, I'd be a little bit more engaged with the play. I think we'd see nicer numbers here on it. Just a little bit too low for me, I think. I think that's an overpay. If he was down further, and somewhere in the mid fours, that would be a more appropriate price, I think.
Number 2 on the boom is Jared Vanderbilt. Number 2, Terry, at 48, just under 50. Nobody's touching Mo Bamba, although that's dropped a little bit as more lineups keep coming in. But right there is Vanderbilt at 48%. He is 41.6%. I see owned, but he's worked in 39.5 right on the optimal lineup here. He's at 4,100. Can you say no to Vanderbilt?
I think he's a strong yes. I think he deserves the ownership he's getting. He's got a really strong boom score probability, really strong optimal lineup rate. I actually like him better where we pay more for him, but gain a lot of leverage ground on FanDuel. He's 5,100 as a power forward on the FanDuel slate, so 1,000 more, but way lower ownership, way more leverage over there. I do like a lot, though, getting to him in excess of the field where you can move him around between power forward and center on the DraftKings slate. Has been super productive in his time. He's averaged 26.5 minutes over their last 3, trending upward. The team's been just dealing with some bumps and bruises in the front court. He requires no usage, 7.8% usage over those 3, putting up 8.3 real points per game, 35.3% rebounding share that translates to 8 rebounds a game in that 3-game stretch, 4.0 stocks per game in the stretch. So yeah, there's upside for counting stats there. There's certainly some upside at the price. I definitely like getting to it in what should be a higher scoring game on the slate relative to everything else.
Now we've talked about him in reference based off of everybody else below him on Alex's boom bust probability, but Mo Bamba right now at 50, just under 52%, the highest guy on the boom percentage. I see him here, DK at 7,000. Is this the play, even if you're working he and Cat in on the lineup?
Yeah, I think that might be an interesting way to put it together, and one that, maybe not everybody's looking at because they're going up against one another, but you're getting a ridiculously optimal guy there. So it makes sense to continue rostering him. It's just in terms of where he is price-wise for his production, was I excited about rostering him instead of Karl Anthony Towns? If you're talking about putting them both together, I think that does have appeal given how frequently optimal he is and the ridiculous upside we've got even at that 7,000 salary. So highly productive player. As long as you're still considering, since he's going to be owned and since Cat is not the sneakiest of plays, I would still keep an eye on my roster construction and make sure that I'm working in a couple reasonably low owned guys. You don't have to go completely bonkers. Cat's only 18% owned. So if you're working in a couple guys that are in like that 12% range, you should be all right with your ownership product. But I would look for another low owned guy to work in there.
Any other low owned guy in Orlando that you would look to work in here, or are you pretty much done with the Magic at this point of the season?
Oh, I've been done with the Magic for weeks, but they keep popping up with relevance.
Well, then that's fine. As long as there's a reason to justify it, that's totally okay.
They're there. Yeah, look, we could get in relevance out of Gary Harris at 4,300 with multi-position eligibility. We could see relevance from Ignas Brazdeikis, of all people, former Knick, with just a 3,700 salary at the power forward spot. So there's minutes to shovel around for these guys. They're not the most productive players in the world. The two guys I just named are both under 0.65 fantasy points per minute across all situations, not getting giant minutes projections from us. Mo Wagner in that same boat, RJ Hampton in that same boat, Dwayne Bacon in that same boat. There's just a lot of guys who are just, replacement level type basketball players who might see minutes, might see a little bit of relevance, but most of those guys I named in the second list there are priced appropriately for the 30-ish minutes we've got them playing. They're all in the mid 5,000s.
Now, I know that I'm newer here to the Awesemo community, so I saw this on the chat here, Terry. Sam Van Dam. This might be the first Awesemo show I've watched where both hosts are older than him. I know that we both have a touch. Isn't that a product, right? A touch of gray.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that we come off that old, right? Jeez.
I think it's all relative. Yeah, we come off old to these really young eyes. What we need is an older audience, I think. We'll sacrifice our precious, like 18 to 35 demo. We skew older. Look for that old gambling crowd, like those slot pullers. And then we're the young kids in the room again. It's going to be great.
Look, as somebody who lives in an area in Philly where the casinos have been legal for a little bit, do you know how hard it is to pull that demographic off of a slot machine? Good luck, brother. Good luck. All right, today's show brought to you by No House Advantage. I love this, seeing more and more about this, especially as somebody who has been locked into player props, from the books and just the general betting. If you have the access to No House Advantage, this is the way to go. Cash prizes, MLB, NFL, NBA, even PGA, across the board. You can win with over 500 player props. And on top of that, you can get a deposit bonus, $20, your first deposit bonus. Just use our code Awesemo. You've been telling me a little bit more about this, especially from a betting standpoint. And the more I look into it and the more I see just how you can use it to your advantage, it's amazing. It really is. It seems like the precursor to the future of betting player props.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are betting player props, I would just jump to our No House Advantage projections page and start using that to make your actual player props bets after you make your No House Advantage lineups. Like, this is a multi-purpose tool now. I love just checking this thing out when I'm considering a prop or when I'm putting lines into No House Advantage. We've got that where you can just sort it by the over odds, the under odds for whatever projection that whatever prop bet that you're looking at. And you get Alex's projection right alongside what the line is, so you can gauge how close Alex has them projected and then next to the probability in a percentage form of it coming in. So just, sorting for Deangelo Russell, who we were just talking about, is seeing a nice little assist share lately. His line is 7.5 assists. Alex has him 81.6% to come in under that. So
Really?
that's an interesting way that you can look at a prop bet. Alex has him projected for 6.2. That's a decent amount away from the 7.5 line. So you can get there, you can get into each one of these props and analyze it. And we've also got our optimal lineups page where we're putting out like 500 optimal lineups. So maybe don't roll the top ones off the top that are the most optimal, but everybody's going to grab those. Jump back a few pages where nobody's going to click back to page 4. Grab those, enter those. You're going to be getting some incredible lineups out of this.
The research and the tools that are available, it's amazing. And it's streamlined too, which is what I love about it here is that you don't have to sit through. And while you say you can go deeper into a couple of pages, depending on how much there is for you, but it doesn't feel like it's a journal that's just been transferred over, a stack, if you will, right? That's been transferred over online. It's so easy to comprehend. And I love what you're saying about it as a tool, as a research tool, where you can use it for betting, especially for player props, because you have not only the projections, but you have what Alex has as well. And that's what we always keep going back to, right? With the ownership projections, our boom bust projections as well. So no house advantage. Make sure you sign up if you haven't already today and use our promo code Awesemo for a free $20 deposit. All right, my friend, we are halfway through here. So we'll hit the 4th of 6 games. We still have to get to the late slate now here coming into it. Suns, Lakers, Thunder, Kings still to go. But now Bulls, Pistons, Detroit, right? Correct me. The lone team coming off of the back-to-back yesterday against the Sixers, and that went about accordingly as expected. So Detroit at home hosting Chicago. We already talked about 2 strong options up front with Cat and a lesser option at Mo Bamba. Here, 10-6 is Vooch right there at the top, Terry.
Yeah, and he ranks right there next to Cat in terms of our optimal lineup rate on the FanDuel slate. I think he's definitely relevant. It's another player where I think he's a little bit cheap over there for 9,700. Him and Cat are priced very similarly on both sites and getting similar production numbers from us, similar projections, similar minutes, similar usage, or similar ownership rather from the public. I think they're both kind of just in play as who they are. We can expect them to come in between their median projection and a minor ceiling score. We're not getting massive boom score probabilities on either one of them, but relative to the other center plays available on the sites, I think Vooch is at worst 3rd, if we want to include Bamba and his massive optimal rate, but a lot of ownership on that list, then yeah, I would probably rank Vooch 3rd, but he's very much in play and somebody I want to rotate through some of my center shares, particularly with a lot of the public going to Bamba on the FanDuel slate.
Yeah, I saw pretty low right on FanDuel as far as the boom percentage, just overall, I guess, compared to Bamba. When you keep going on that roster, Levine is clearly back, right, where he's getting the minutes, or at least the expected minutes, 9,800. I wonder if that's just a little too much because you're still maybe you're still thinking, or you're still waiting to see that performance that we've become accustomed to seeing pre being out.
Yeah, he's down since the deadline in the games that he's played. He's down to just 1.13 fantasy points per minute. Still seeing a team leading 30.8% usage. So he's still getting his looks, getting the opportunity to produce. He's just been down a little bit, and he's not really priced down. If we were getting $8,500 Zach LaVine even on DK, if we were getting 8,000 Zach LaVine at shooting guard on FanDuel instead of 9,000, I think he'd be a lot more interesting. He's got more utility for the 9,000 at shooting guard on FanDuel. Shooting guard's just kind of a dead position. As well, a lot of the positions were a little flat today on FanDuel, to be honest. But I just think he's got more utility over there. Gives us a little bit of wiggle room in terms of his leverage, in terms of the amount that we find him optimal compared to the amount that the public's willing to pay for him over there. It's just not one of my favored plays when he's not really running right. Mostly a volume-based scorer, a guy who needs the ball to be going down for him. Still leads the team in scoring and is still a hyper-productive player in general, but just shaved off the rates a little bit. It's enough for me to be a little bit shy about getting there at these prices.
Yeah, now I wonder, factoring in that and just kind of looking at where Kobe White is at 7,100, I see on DraftKings at least, if he doesn't become as appealing of a play with the it's almost like with Levine coming up and maybe expecting to return, you have White's value dropping a little bit? Or is that price maybe enough for you to jump on at 7,100?
I think it's actually a little high. I think 71 is a bit much to pay. We've got White's has been 0.87 fantasy points per minute across all situations, 0.90 since the trade deadline. I think it's probably, fair at 7,100, but I'm looking for better than fair price in a lot of these decisions. And I think we've got that at some different spots. He can be mixed and matched into some lineups, but it doesn't look like he's got a ton of upside on the DK slate. 6,100 on the FanDuel slate, 1,000 less. He hits a little bit more interestingly. He's coming up around 10% of the time in the optimal, has a decent boom score probability. Still not one of my real strong, like I need to get to this guy type plays, but I think he's got more utility and more upside at that price on FanDuel.
How do you even approach Detroit right now, knowing that they've just kind of been up and down, a lot of injuries and just moving people in and maybe, well, actually, you know what? Before we jump to Detroit, I'm just curious at 6,000, if we're talking about a guy, and this came up, I think, a similar theme last week with you, Terry, where Thaddeus Young is so minute dependent on what you would do with him at 6,000. I wonder where that price lands for you and either appealing or if it's just a strong stay away because maybe he is overpriced and people have caught up.
Yeah, I think the price is at best fair for the 19 minutes we've got him projected for. If we had him projected 26, 28 minutes, I'd be more interested, but I think he'd still probably land around the middle of the board. He is a productive player when he's out there for the season, 1.20 fantasy points per minute. I think he's just had some of his rates shaved, and apologies, I don't have them immediately at hand, but I think some of his rates have come down in terms of recent production, since the deadline and everything. So he's just a little further down the board. If he got minutes, it would be a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, 20 and then 18 respectively. Charlotte on the 6th and then Boston on the 7th. That's where you had the 18. It was 28-33, Philly, Atlanta, the 2 games before that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's so high or low from 19 to 33. It's a volatile play. So that's where I went back to the price tag. I just wanted to make sure. All right, no worries. Now to move to Detroit, I mean, are we looking at this similarly as we saw Orlando? I mean, you do have Sadiq Bey out there, Isaiah Stewart as well, but these guys are high 6,000s on DraftKings. So I get it that somebody's going to be out there and the ball's going to go through the hoop at some point. But these numbers, these prices, at least on DraftKings, appear to me, at least, Terry, a little high.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I will say you get an interesting leverage score if Jeremy Grant plays on him. 6.3 leverage score is kind of appealing, but less than 10% of the optimal lineups. It's just not there for these guys. That applies across the board. He's the highest one at 7.3%. Unless we're taking Saban Lee into account with his 8.8 at 3,100, given an 18-minute projection. You asked how I'm approaching this team tonight, and it's kind of like how I'm approaching like vacation planning as far as Detroit goes. I just don't go. I think that's kind of what I'm going to do with this team here. I don't love any of the players that are going to be out there. Sadiq Bey would be interesting and relevant in terms of safety. Like we know he's probably going to be out there. We've got him projected for the highest amount of minutes. It doesn't really matter for him at that $6,900 price on DK. He's got a lot more relevance on FanDuel for 62 at a dead small forward spot. He comes up 20% optimal over there. So I think he's in play on the FanDuel slate. Grant would be in play as well. And so would Stewart, but Stewart's getting a lot of ownership on FanDuel. And just like you said, the pricing's just got them totally flat on the DK slate. If you were getting a handful of shares of each of them, that would be fine. But I wouldn't go nuts to exceed even the 5.8% ownership on Stewart on DK. It's just not there.
Now, I know that we're Northeast guys and all, but are you telling me that a weekend in Detroit at the Henry Ford American Institute, Auto Institute is not appealing? To just one weekend, 2 days, you couldn't do 2 in Detroit? Is that what you're telling me?
I have heard it's come around a lot. See, I still think Detroit, I still think like RoboCop. We're 80s kids.
Yes.
So like that's like my images of Detroit. I don't want to go to that Detroit. Maybe the nice new Detroit, catch a Tigers game. Maybe there's something there. Visit my pal Dave.
What a pull, by the way, because you're right. RoboCop, at least like for our generation, and I know we're getting called out for being the older generation here on Awesemo, but nothing did worse for the description and visuals of Detroit in that movie.
Yeah,
Fair enough. So. Now nobody will even play him in DFS because of RoboCop.
I think I'd rather play RoboCop in this game, to be quite honest, even with his slow movements.
Fair enough. Exactly right. You might even get a good price on FanDuel. No worries. All right, so let's move on, right? Because Detroit, unless we've missed anybody here, we can round out here the final two games. Before that, though, let's tell you about another opportunity, really, to remind you about the Awesemo Hall of Fame. It's just a fantastic thing happening here where we allow you to go out and brag away. We encourage you to go out and brag away with the Awesemo profile pick. And you need that first, right? Just download the Awesemo profile pick at awesemo.com/avatar. You can see all the fantastic wins as we cycle through, as I tell you how you tweet your wins, of course, at Awesemo HOF, place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants, and you'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And just look at these ridiculous wins that keep coming through, and they keep seeing the profile pick over and over. I switched up mine just in the event that it'll never happen, but just in the event that I could take that screenshot and do it. It's never going to happen, trust me, but
we're going to get you there. We're going to get you into the Hall of Fame, no doubt about it. Even if it's one of those like down the line honorary type things, like the Veterans Committee or whatever, we'll get you in there. But I see a win coming for you.
Fair enough. I didn't know that there was a Veterans Committee, but I feel a lot better now that I could sneak in the back door. Hey, I don't think anybody complained. Canton, Cooper's, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? All the way up to Springfield.
In is in, right?
Exactly.
Hey, our chat's pretty killer. We got multiple "I'd buy that for $1" references from our chat from RoboCop. So well done out there, guys.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Yes, even Robert Redmond said it funny. He's from Detroit. But yeah, we get it. The city has come a long way. If only the basketball team could follow, maybe everything else. All right, let's look at Anthony Davis tonight. I see him as probable. All in expectations are, Terry, right, that he's going to play tonight. So at 10-3 on DraftKings, are you locking him in? Or I can't, knowing he's going to play, is AD a lock tonight?
Lock is probably strong. He's definitely in play. I definitely like getting to him over there, 10-3, and moving him between power forward and center on that site. I think there's a ton of utility in there. And if we're talking about a potential upside player, even with the numbers not really bearing it out, right? This is not something I'll normally do in terms of Alex has a 3.6% boom score probability on him for the salary. But if we're just thinking in terms of guys who need to come out and put their foot down basketball-wise, AD is kind of in that spot for this Lakers team here today, playing up against a Phoenix team that is a strong contender out in the West, playing kind of a grindy, pacey kind of game. This is the kind of game he could shine in. So I do like the upside there. I trust in Alex's numbers. I'm riding with Alex's numbers. That's what I use when I crunch all this stuff. So it's curious to see where we're going to get him in terms of how frequently he comes up in our optimizers. But I think that might also be true across the industry. So I think it might be worth maybe just giving him a little nudge, a little bit of a kick to get to more of them than it looks like the field is. Similar story across the industry on FanDuel. I think he's just a lot more relevant, comes up more optimal. You get him at power forward over there, which is why, and you're required to roster 2. So if I'm locking him, it's probably more of a just actual literal lock on FanDuel. I don't like to lock anybody, but I think he's in play on both sites and definitely would be excited to roster him.
So let's look at the opposite, right? We go from probable with AD, Terry, to Kuz, who looks like he's out. I know he's still doubtful, but all intents and purposes are he won't play tonight. And I see, again, a guy right there in the top percentage for Alex on the boom percentage and on DraftKings is Horton Tucker, with the expectations of filling in some minutes. Very super low owned at 6% on DraftKings. Is this now an appealing play with the expectations, or at least the assumption, that Kuzma's out?
So I would like to see that. I think of last time we had I saw on the Newswise, we also had Horton Tucker with a Q tag on him too, though. That would be one issue.
Correct.
Yeah. So that would be the one issue. And yeah, and we tend to see when we get news on guys like that, we do tend to see the ownership jump in our later updates after we get news. So a lot of the time we'll build in some trepidation on part of the public in those plays where we're putting them in for full minutes or at least some expectation of minutes, but we don't project the ownership out the same way. So sometimes those leverage scores can be a little bit deceiving from that regard. But if he does go, I do like him here. He's 245 minutes since the trade deadline with Schroeder and LeBron off. He's a 1.1 fantasy point per minute scorer. There's upside at that salary if he goes. So yeah, I do like that spot. Given a 26.5-minute projection from Alex, he's got a nice boom score probability on both sites. Like you said, significant leverage given the optimal rates on both sites. If nothing changed about the play ownership wise, it would be a smash spot given those leverage scores, assuming that he was in and nothing changed. Assuming that he goes and that ownership levels off, I still really like getting to the play at least around the field. And I would probably still consider getting over the field.
Okay, so let me throw this scenario out here with the Lakers because we know already, right? LeBron's out, AD is in, Kuzma is out, Horton Tucker is in. How do you look at Caruso with the expectations that he plays? Also questionable, mind you.
Right. Yeah. Again, another guy with the Q tag. But yeah, I like Caruso here. I think he goes. It seemed like he was trending that way. He's a 0.79 fantasy point per minute contributor for the entire season. I'm just scrolling up as I'm talking, looking for him in what I wrote about him in the deep dive this afternoon, because he is a 0.99. That's the number I was looking for. It's only 46 minutes in the sample without the specific group of Lakers since the trade deadline. 46 minutes, 0.99 fantasy points per minute, which would be significant room for upside at that price. We've got him projected out for over a 30-minute night, assuming that he does go. So given that around a point per minute at 30 minutes, I think there's plenty of upside, plenty of room to get to him here. We've got him projected a little bit below those rates, so there's room for safety and there's upside on the play.
All right, that was a quick follow-up I had on that, just the safety for it, but you answered it, no problem. Moving on, we can switch to the Suns here. I'm just curious, though, on the tail end of it. We talked about a couple of plays up front, and even at 6,500 on DraftKings, I wonder if Drummond is too much.
I don't totally take him off the board just given the monstrous per minute rates that he can put up given time. So in the event that this game gets away from LA, you never know what the minutes shake out like. In the event that we don't have Kuzma in the front court, there's just an additional body out of the rotation there. So we've got him pegged at 21.8 minutes right now, which doesn't have him overly slate relevant. If he jumps up to the mid 20s, he becomes pretty quickly relevant at those prices. We're talking about a guy 1.37 fantasy points per minute across the season. We know he's got upside like that. Those numbers are lower since joining the Lakers. He's 1.18 since joining LA, 1.15 in games without LeBron James over the last 30 days. So the rate isn't quite as explosive as we've seen, but as like any given slate kind of a play, there are few guys with that kind of crazy per minute upside that he could provide.
Can we just take a second out and just give Terry a shout here? I mean, his Knicks just won live as we've been doing this deep dive here for you, everybody out there, for you on the Awesemo chat, awesemo.com. His Knicks with a gigantic road victory in LA to keep up on Atlanta, and you didn't even know it. Like, if you were watching Terry this whole time, you wouldn't even know it. Congratulations. That's tough. I don't know if I could do that with the big game for the Sixers on in the background like that.
I tell you what, I told you when we came in here, I don't have the TV up in this office yet, and I'm really regretting having missed that game, but I'm happy to do it for you guys. I'm happy to be here with everybody hanging out, talking basketball.
Now, hopefully I didn't spoil anything, right? Like, this isn't a Seinfeld thing where it's like, no, I have that on DVR. Jeez. Another dated reference. We're old. I apologize. All right.
BC what?
Right. Seinfeld, is that? So Booker, Chris Paul, looking at the prices, even Devin Booker, and I think it's probably come down a little bit, right? Because he hasn't lived up to this. Oh, he's going to drop 55 a night. But I just wonder, even at 7,800, I see on DraftKings, if there were a choice between the two, knowing what you're going to or potentially can get from Booker, if you'd be interested in playing Paul as over Booker in this case.
Yeah, I think I've been getting to Paul a little bit more than Booker in general through the season. I think maybe part of it is positioning on FanDuel, where you get Paul at point guard and you get Booker at shooting guard, where I've just been extracting more value, I think, from the shooting guard position overall this season. Booker's been appropriately priced through most of the year. He's down to 1.10 fantasy points for the year. He's still their leading usage guy. He's 31.9% usage for the season. but he only kicks in a 23.7 assist share, 13.9% rebounding rate. He doesn't do a ton of other things. If he's not scoring the ball, which there's no real reason to expect that he's not going to score the ball to an extreme degree, but I think he's just going to get around what he normally does here. It's going up against the Lakers defense that's still very good. I think they were third ranked in the league. The guys on the morning show said, didn't bother to look it up. I'll take their word for it. But I think it's a tough spot for throwing Devin Booker, who is appropriately priced, into that grinder, where I think Chris Paul, guy that has the ball in his hands, can just do more things on the court, has been that guy throughout his career who stuffs the stat sheet in multiple categories, 1.20 fantasy points per minute on the season. I just think he's earned more of these shares than Booker has this year. So yeah, I would prefer Paul if I'm going to one of these two guys.
Looks like, real quick, we did find somebody older than us on the stream, Malakar. I remember when they were called the Knickerbockers. So there you go.
As long as you don't remember when the Yankees were, as long as you don't remember the Yankees being called the Hilltoppers, I think you're probably okay. I thought you were going to throw Emac under the bus there by saying that he was in the chat. Our old pal just turned 50 last weekend.
Is that right?
Or 2 weekends ago, maybe. Recently.
Okay. Well, he's got a little bit on me. I'm sure he's got a little on you too then, right?
Little bit. I just turned 42.
See, so we're the same age. That's why I got your RoboCop reference so well. We're the same age. All right, let's look. DeAndre 69, Bridges at 5,700, even Harold down there at 4,500. Is there anybody that's going to jump out at you beyond the two guys in the backcourt for Phoenix?
Michael Bridges, I guess, is a little bit interesting. Again, another guy who fits into that small forward position that's just totally dead on FanDuel. 5,900. He's basically priced for what he does, who he is. 0.82 fantasy points per minute across the season. No real reason to expect that that's going to be wildly different. They do get Jay Crowder back in the lineup tonight, but I expect Bridges will still see that around 35 minutes that we've got him projected for. Puts him in play just because there's not much else to go to at that position on FanDuel. He's a lot less relevant on the DK slate. He's coming up less than 10% optimal. No real extreme reason to get to him. He's fine. He's an okay mix-in option over there, but there are actually reasons to go to him on the FanDuel slate. So I think he's in play over on the blue site.
We got to wrap up here with this game. It's the most miserable game, at least in real life, on the slate, without a doubt. OKC at Sacramento at 9.5 points. I'm seeing on Odd Shopper, and you hear we talk about odds. We reference odds all the time. This is where we go. When I'm not on Awesemo and I'm doing all the sports betting stuff here in Philly and beyond, this is where I go. Oddshopper.awesemo.com. As things change, as things adjust, you want to make sure that you're caught up to it. So I'm looking here as we speak, Terry. Odd Shopper has it at a 9.5 point line. So clearly in 223, that key number of a total, there's going to be some offense expected, but Sacramento, at least the expectations from the books and beyond, is going to be able to score some points here. Fox, we know, is out. Hield has that Q tag. Where to begin? Well, I guess we start with OKC first, just to get them out of the way. Is there anything at all with the Thunder on this brutally bad team?
Oh, geez. I think if we're choosing bad players from bad teams in bad games, we can go to other bad players from other bad teams that we've already talked about.
Like, you don't have to play people in every game, right?
Right. Yeah. And especially in basketball, like some nights there are just teams that are skippable. Some nights there are players that are just skippable. There are mix-in plays on this team, right? If you wanted to mix, Poku into some of the lineups, I think Roby's out. I've still got him on the board here, but I think he was ruled out. If Roby went or if Basley is going, those guys are okay to mix in. I wouldn't get to too much of Mo Brown, even at 4,500 on the FanDuel slate. He's got a nice boom score probability, but he doesn't come up all that optimal just compared to some of the other options that we've talked through with your Mo Bambas, your Vooches, your Karl Anthony Townses of the world. And all of those guys are less relevant on the DraftKings slate. So yeah, if I'm going to this game, it's the other side.
All right, well, let's go to the other side. Buddy Hield looks like still has that Q tag next to him. We know Fox is out. So right there at the top, Barnes is the other guy with the Q tag next. Oh, pardon me. He's down to doubtful. So I imagine if you're going to run through an injury tag, it would be Buddy Hield at the top. Although at 8,200, is that a deterrent?
Yeah, I mean, just going by Alex's numbers, which again are the way that I like to do these things, particularly on guys like Buddy Hield, that I personally, well, not personally, but just business-wise for DFS, do not like to get to. I know Rinpack likes to get to him. He's one of those guys. He's one of his guys. For me, it's the opposite. I go out of my way to not have to roster Buddy Hield, but I do think there are appealing reasons to do it, even at 8,200 today. And that comes down to a lot of the leverage. You get him at shooting guard and small forward. If he's out there, I don't think a lot of people are going to go to him, even in like a quick, switch over kind of a play, like we were seeing with the other guy who would gain ownership. I think Buddy's going to float around where he's at, even in terms of this ownership. So leverage wise, I can justify it. I don't love it still. There's not a massive boom score probability. He's probably a little too pricey for being Buddy Hield. But if he does get that 36 minutes tonight, I think he's got a little bit of sneaky slate relevance.
Normally, I think I would just move past because of the price that I'm seeing on DraftKings. And last one as we wrap up, because there's really not much more with this Thunder and Kings game. But Rashawn Holmes, at 6,800, just the tag might be a little bit of a sticker shock. But then you look the last couple of games here, Terry, he's gone 31, 31, and then most recently 33 with minutes. If you can get over 30 minutes from Holmes, does that 6,800 tag become a little bit more appealing?
It does. Yeah, absolutely. He's a guy who's been a productive player in terms of when he gets minutes. He's been, let's see, we've got him projected for a 30-minute night. He's been at that level over their last 5 games, like you were just detailing. He was 27 minutes a night in like the month prior to that when I looked it up. So assuming that he continues with that trend of getting more minutes, he's a little bit over a point per minute kind of a guy. There's nice upside there. 6,400. I think you get a decent shot at a boom score. Alex has him at a 50% chance on FanDuel of getting a boom score. So even with some opportunity cost to those other centers, I don't think he's off the board in FanDuel shares. And then where you can roster him alongside a Mo Bamba, alongside a Karl Anthony Towns on DK, I think he's got a lot of relevance. And that might be one where we talked about, do you want to roster Towns and Bamba together from the same game? Maybe you put Rashawn Holmes into that Mo Bamba spot next to Karl Anthony Towns in more of those shares than not, because they've got similar marks across the board over there. So I think that's an interesting play. And then I wouldn't.
Sorry,
I was just going to throw in. I wouldn't.
No,
with Fox scratching, I wouldn't sleep on Delon Wright at the point guard spot now. I think he's
awesome.
Back
I appreciate it. I'm sorry, brother. I thought you were done, and I was going to jump in, tell everybody about Live Before Lock coming up right now. I also threw out minus 250 on the big board odds that you have RoboCop somewhere in the view behind you that you could just point 100%. To. And exactly. See, there we go. All right, Terry, thanks again, brother. At Digital B21 on Twitter for Terry, at Shander Show for me. Thanks, Jordan. Another fantastic show in the books. Live Before Lock coming your way right now here on Awesemo.com. Awesemo Plus. Make sure you sign up. Have a great night. Good luck.
Welcome to Live Before Lock, as I muted myself accidentally there. Eric, it happens, man. It happens. At least the on-off button is right in front of me, and so I can see when exactly maybe I'm not there live. But of course, we're here to break this one down for you tonight. Eric, I was kind of looking through all of our premium data and tools we have over Awesemo.com, and I'm looking at these top-end options, and I'm like, okay, who do I want to go all in? Not all in on, but I want to have a good amount of shares. And then I'm looking at our ownership projections. Okay, everyone's on Luka. We saw what happened the other day with Luka. What was it, 23 minutes? I think 36 DK points. But then, I look at the ownership on AD. I look at the ownership on Vooch. Both of those teams have to win when we're talking about real basketball. The Lakers got to start winning games, because they're going to be in the play-in tournament. We know that. You look at Chicago, they're trying to get into the play-in tournament. So I'm looking at those two guys. I'm saying, man, I think I might want to have more of them than I want to have of Luka and Cat.
Yeah, this is similar to like Friday, where we had a little bit of I had extra interest in some of like the pieces of CJ McCollum, Alex Caruso, Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis. I got on a little bit later as Greg lamented me also not looking forward to Tuesday. Definitely probably want to check out the tip-off show with him, and I lost my bet. I took Kelly Olynyk straight up against Anthony Davis. In hindsight, maybe not the smartest thing I've ever done in my entire life, but they both played awesome. Kelly O had 54. Anthony Davis 56. That's enough for him to win a bet and me to have to do something stupid. So looking forward to that. But you're dead on with that. Like, you got to be able to factor in later in these late season NBA games, just kind of what the motive is, because that can be an extra couple of minutes here or there, or a team like OKC, which I don't even really know what we're supposed to do here because I want to target everybody against Sacramento. It is nice that there's another game in that 10 o'clock window, so you can kind of mix and match, but Teo Maledon being in or out is kind of a big deal, and I don't want to admit it.
Yeah, when we look at OKC, of course, we already knew that Shea's out. We now know Lou Dort is out. Ty Jerome is out. So that news came in a little while ago. I feel like every Sunday when I'm sitting here talking NBA with you, especially like it seems like the last 3 weeks, Bobby Hield is becoming. Is he even coming into the friend zone with you yet?
Don't do that. No, we're never going to be in that place. It's like that girl in high school where you think you have a chance. You really have no chance. He has no chance to be that girl for me. He will never be her for me. That will always be Harrison Barnes on the other side, who I think is a real good life basketball player. Won't be playing today, but more than likely. And feeling that Buddy Hield is anything other than a volume scorer that you must play on the volition of no De'Aaron Fox is wasted energy. But as I said, like Buddy Hield, fine for DFS purposes for now. Fire him up a little bit. Like I can't imagine a route where I'm not going to have a tiny bit if he ends up going here after being questionable. And again, I like reacting to late news. That's a big part of my process. So I think having a little extra interest in these 10 p.m. games, I'm going to try to mix and match based on what that OKC starting lineup is and figure out some stuff from there. Cause I contrary to popular belief, I don't just play chalk.
That was as I was starting my research this morning on tonight's slate. But the first thing I did, I said, okay, let me pull up the standings because we're 1 week to go. And I'm sitting there just thinking, okay, who are the teams that A, got to win, or B, are on that, are right there within a couple of games to potentially get in the playoff tournament, and what is going to be the thoughts of those teams. Like you look at the Sacramento Kings, they started today 3 games behind the Spurs for that 10th spot. So, that's part of my thought process. I'm looking at these teams. I mean, look, and then I started looking at like the Lakers. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games. Like at some point, I know when I was watching the strategy show this morning, Josh outright picked the Lakers to win this game straight up. If you like that, just go play that money line. Go over to Hot Shopper and check out that money line.
DFS. Just fire up some cash.
Playing.
Yes, pass on the 6.5. Just let's ride. Jordan Klein behind the glass. Are we putting together a little piece of goodies together? Maybe. Yeah, I think we might have to tonight. This might be a specialty late night hammer 2-teamer. I think I do like the Lakers plus 6.5. I think I would probably side on that end of it. And I think also siding on the Sacramento side, similar to Minnesota, just like been in way too many competitive games here of late. Buddy Hield doesn't know that they're tanking. I'm pretty sure he's out there chucking every night, making it as hard for Sacramento to lose as possible. Minnesota won 4 games in a row before dropping 3 in a row here, finally starting to do what they're supposed to do. Wish tanking wasn't a thing, but it needs to be what you do if you're one of these crappy teams. But don't tell a guy like Buddy Hield that.
Look, as a Magic fan, the Bulls need to lose. Come on, Bulls, just lose games. I need you in that lottery.
You still end up in the lottery, though, if you end up in the play-in tournament and lose, correct? I heard that somewhere.
I believe that
still end up in the lottery. It just means you have crappier odds.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, Vooch is one of those options that I'm looking at. The question is how much do people want to get to a 9,800 Zach LaVine, in that game? By the way, the Magic starting lineup did come in a little while ago. It'll be Anthony Harris, Bacon, Wagner, and Mo Bamba. Look, everyone likes to say you're Chalk City over here. Well, that's Mo Bamba.
I mean, easy. Yeah, there's a reason I've been winning for the last week. Just chalk going off left and right here. If I hadn't locked Ben Simmons in on Friday on accident because I was on the show and firing it around, let it be known I have a better dummy in today than I did last week. So I'm feeling good about it. But yeah, Mohamed Bamba. I think FanDuel is kind of the conversation to have. I'm playing a little bit more on DraftKings, but I've got enough over on FanDuel that I'm paying pretty close attention to what that center ownership is going to be coming in at. I like that he's been coming down a little bit here, now below 25%. He's sitting a little bit behind Cat, but I don't know. I think I have a center play that I like a lot that I don't know if the field's really going to be there. So we'll get to him later.
This is my question about Mo Bamba, especially the fact that he is in the starting lineup tonight, is could he potentially get in some early foul trouble going up against Cat?
Yeah, he could, but he could also go out and put up 60. And I think on DraftKings, playing 2 centers feels a lot safer than on a lot of slates here of late. I mean, on DraftKings, it's 7K. I think you play a bunch of Bamba and you don't think twice about it, where you can play roster 2 centers, as I just said. Karl Anthony Towns, another great piece there. Really like Rashawn Holmes, like Jackson Hayes a little bit. I think that kind of mixing and matching the center position, it just looks so stacked on this slate. There's some other places that, you can use that utility spot, but I think I'm going to be doubling down on center quite a bit there. FanDuel, it really gets interesting because there's a guy sitting at 4,500 who's Moses Brown, who I think is going to be a big allocation of my lineups. I'm going to have him in probably an irrational number. 4,500 is a really, really low tag for a guy that I think has a bigger minutes upside here. Played 28 and 30 the 2 games previously. Didn't look very good. That second Golden State game, they just got ran out of the gym, lost by almost 40 there. And yeah, they just didn't play him there coming down the stretch, nor should they. But if he gets 30 minutes in a Sacramento matchup, God, he's coming in right now under 3%. And that is mind blowing to me because, again, he's 4,500. We know the kind of upside he has at 30 minutes because he just kept going for it over and over again. I think having those other pieces like Baisley there now, that's a problem. But we got Pokashevsky out already. I saw that he wouldn't play. So I'm happy to see that already. Tony Bradley doesn't exist really. He ended up playing 20 minutes in that first Golden State game. Didn't appear last time out. Isaiah Roby in the mix, but been kind of playing those mid-20s minutes. Moses Brown's a scary option to be firing up as much as I am.
We just got the lineup in from News God with the Minnesota T-Wolves. It'll be Rubio, Russell, Edwards, Vanderbilt, and Towns. When we talked about players that were getting, for me, and was coming up in a ton of my crunches when I was running my crunches for my 20 max, Vanderbilt was one of those guys. Moses Brown was another one. They too. I was getting a ton of Mo Bamba, which what I found myself doing is, okay, on DraftKings, where I'm primarily playing tonight, is that I'm teaming up Mo Bamba with an AD, a Luka. I'm trying to get into that because, look, I'm not expecting that we're going to get a 36-point DK performance out of Luka like we saw the other night. Of course, the only concern is what happens if Dallas just, rolls out of the gym, third quarter, the game's over. And if you're Dallas, why play Luka? But who knows? This is the NBA. There's times where we think a blowout's going to happen, and then all of a sudden, the fourth quarter, it's a 5-point game.
If you just group it by fantasy points per minute on certain plays on the slate, I mean, 1.58, Cat coming in at 1.46 over on DraftKings. Basically, if you're saying that I get 30 minutes of Luka no matter what, like, again, we haven't projected for 35, so that's obviously baked in, but the amount of plays that you have on the cheap end coming into late season NBA and the way that you're able to mix and match and try to hit the correct ones. I'm always overweight on the studs this time of year. It's very rare that I'm not. I'm extremely stars and scrubs unless you get something like a Giannis Antetokounmpo out, and then you get Middleton and Holiday, and you can mix and match them at the 7-8K range. But when you start getting these studs, if you're just grouping by the projection over on Fantasy Cruncher, I mean, it comes Cat, Luka, Vooch. I mean, there's really no way around it. And then Mo Bamba actually fourth. That is just so insane on DraftKings. That is mind blowing. But basically looking at this top end and going overweight on them and trying to mix and match the right crappy players to mix around them. I mean, that's the thing about OKC today. They have enough bodies that they're firing people left and right to play 22, 24 minutes. But you get Teo Maledon off the floor. You get Pokashevsky off the floor. Ty Jerome's now out. Those are like, they're becoming a little bit more limited, and the player pool is getting a little bit more condensed on that side of the ball, and they get a Sacramento matchup. I don't know. It feels like a spot that I'm going to try to mix and match based on whatever that starting lineup ends up being. It's not a fun team to talk about that much. I don't think anybody's really emphasized them much on any of the previous shows because it's just such a gross team. But in tournaments, I think that one or two of those guys could really pop off in a really good Sacramento matchup. I'm hoping Moses Brown is one of them, especially over on FanDuel, where I think that price is just so good. 5,100 on DraftKings, not as good. But kind of my roundabout way of asking your Luka Doncic question is, what does the value look like? Like, what does the value look like on that side of the ball? And a guy like Vanderbilt is projecting out so well. Jackson Hayes, 4,200, projecting out so well. Mo Bamba, Naz Reid, if you want to take some of those shots, I think has some upside as well. Rashawn Holmes grades out pretty cheap. I mean, you're getting him underneath 7K. You can mix and match that way. I don't know. I feel pretty good about most of the value here. So going overweight on Luka is something I'm definitely going to do.
Of course, be sure to subscribe to Awesemo right here on YouTube. We have great content for you each and every day. Hit that notification bell so you know a show is live on the channel. Of course, be sure to give us a thumbs up as well. Of course, also be sure, if you want to get access to all the great premium data and tools we have over at awesemo.com, sign up for Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. And if you just want an Awesemo Plus NBA weekly pass, get that for $16.95. Gives you access to so many great tools and content that we have, from those ownership projections, player projections, and so much more. As news does come in, we will let you know as what we're going to see from there. We talked a little bit about Luka. Let's look at that game. A ton of, you look on the Cleveland side of the equation with the players that are not going to be there. Darius Garland, top of the list. Of course, his price point was 8,500 on DK. So you got Colin Sexton, 9,000, Jared Allen at 7,400 are their top two options over there. Is there anything that you find yourself maybe a little overweight on the field when it comes to the Cavs?
No. And I think that this is a product of the slate for me, having two games in that 10 p.m. window. I understand that we're going to have to be picking and choosing pieces from this 7 p.m. Eastern time slot. Cleveland will not really be a major part of that. I think Dean Wade looks decent enough at 3,700, but I think you could be looking at even better value if you just kind of wait on it. Coming from OKC, if you needed to pick and choose some pieces of the Lakers, who, as you said, that's a team that needs to win. You can take projections and give them a little manual boost based on minutes upside. If a game stays close, 6.5 isn't crazy. And as you said, it's a must-win game for the Lakers in this spot. The Suns still want to keep winning. They want to keep moving as far as they can to that 1-2 side of things. And they look pretty good already. But I think giving a little bit of a manual boost to some of those Lakers makes a lot of sense. And then OKC, depending on Pokashevsky, who's actually questionable. I wanted to be able to amend that. It was Ty Jerome that I saw that got ruled out as well. Did not expect to be talking this much about OKC today because it's a team that's just a disaster to figure out. But Lou Dort already out as well. Ty Jerome out. Very, very thin there in the backcourt. And then the front court could also get a big boost. So I think waiting for some of my value for a little bit later makes some sense. You could get some surprising news that comes from time to time. Not very likely based on some of the injury reports for Phoenix and the Lakers. I don't think we'll get anything really too shocking coming out of that. Like Davis, I'm pretty sure is going to play. He's probable. Not too worried about going to somebody like Kuzma as well. who's going to be out. He's not going to play. So you're going to get minutes that open up somewhere there based on what that starting lineup could look like. We could take some shots elsewhere. But I feel pretty good about waiting on my value and trying to piece some of these late night hammers together, as opposed to just like going way overweight on a Cleveland team that I think kind of spreads the minutes out around enough that it's going to be tough to really identify the guy, especially on DraftKings with Colin Sexton up to 9K. No thanks. On FanDuel, 7K makes sense for Jared Allen and 7,700 for Colin Sexton. Sure, fine. But I think there's other ways that I'd rather go on this slate.
Yeah, I found myself when I was just putting, some lineups together, I did find myself really having a ton on these last two games of the night with the Lakers. I found myself with a lot of Lakers and a lot of Kings, which I wasn't kind of concerning. I saw this note the other day on Friday, and speaking about the Lakers, and it was from Sam Quinn of CBS. Montrezl Harrell has played in 18 games since Andre Drummond has signed. I'm not sure if you've seen this stat. This one stuck out to me. Drummond has had a negative plus minus in 12 of those 18 games. He's had a positive plus minus in 5 of them. He was neutral once. He was a DNP once. He is minus 69 overall in that time. When I saw that pop up on my Twitter timeline, I was like, whoa. Yeah, that was pretty telling.
Yeah. So you meant Montrezl Harrell, not Andre Drummond, right? Okay. Yeah. Correct. You said Andre Drummond on the second one. Yeah. Montrezl Harrell has been very, very bad. I think you saw it in the bubble with the Clippers. I was banging the drum for Zubats to be the only center in the rotation. Harrell came in after getting COVID. He came in late to the bubble for the Clippers. And, that was when I started doing the Slate Starter article. And I just could not believe, based on all of the defensive efficiency numbers, Zubats, he's going to be an issue in the pick and roll. He was fantastic in the bubble at it. Such an improved defensive center. And Harrell was just a liability every time he was on the floor for the Clippers. That's carried over to the Lakers. I think the Lakers maybe thought they could change him, fix him, do what they needed to. But man, he has been very unproductive from a real life basketball perspective. And I would say from a fantasy basketball perspective for most of the year as well. The price tags have never dropped to the level they should have to be able to spark an upside for him. He maintains a price tag in that 4s, 5s, 6s throughout the entire season. It's really tough to want to play him ever, and just not a good basketball player from a real life perspective.
I mentioned this question that we got over in our Slack channel a moment ago and related to the Lakers with THT, where he said, this comes from DOFH, say, is Gary Harris a better value than THT based on the questionable tag, or do you expect THT to have a bigger role tonight?
I hope so, because I'm going to have a lot of him if he ends up playing. I'm right now getting a minimum of 2 Lakers, 2 Kings, 2 OKC guys in my DraftKings lineups. And that's simply just because I want to wait on some news here. I think playing some studs, again, Luka Doncic, sorry, I meant one, making sure that I get 1 Laker, 1 OKC and 1 Sacramento guy. Mm-hmm. That just allows me to be able to mix and match which plays I'm going to have from that late night hammer section. I'm probably going to be getting more than that. Like I'll get 2, I'm sure, from OKC in a lot of my lineups, just because of some of the boosts I've made to the OKC side of the ball. But I think that just being able to look at it from a macro, like what's the overall slate look like? If we're going to be jamming in a bunch of this early value, I just see so many paths, even like looking over at the boom bust tool, seeing guys like Dean Wade, who just look bad, that are just going to bust at a high rate. I'm going to pull him up here for 1 second, because it was really 32% of the time the guy's going to be busting. His ownership's starting to come up here a little bit. Negative leverage on him already at 8% ownership. And I think based on that Kevin Love news, could move up even a little bit more. Kevin Love is in, I think is what I just saw. But
yeah, Chetty Osman and Hartenstein are both out. Kevin Love will play. The starting lineup is Sexton, Okoro, Wade, Love, and Allen.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I guess we're going to have a little bit of Wade interest. I find it hard to not want to have him a little bit here in the starting lineup. No Chetty, no Hartenstein, I thought was going to play today. Wasn't that the news we saw? Yeah, he's out. Okay. So Kevin Love in. I don't understand why they have Kevin Love playing whatsoever. That's very confusing to me. I was basically locking on him being out all day, but what do I know?
The Kevin Love situation, you just kind of wonder what is it just simply he's just going to collect a paycheck for the next 2 years, or at what point does he just get bought out?
it's Cleveland. You just never know. I mean, they're so bad at basketball. Like, if LeBron James wasn't from Ohio, what would the Cleveland franchise look like for the last 20 years? Like, what would it look like?
Yeah.
They would be the Minnesota Timberwolves is who they would be. And that's not a compliment. The guy wearing the Minnesota Twins hat.
I appreciate you not saying Orlando Magic as a Magic fan over here, but you could definitely, you could use the Magic.
Could probably argue on that side of it too, but at least, I mean, you have an NBA Finals appearance in your repertoire the last 15 years. I do not.
True. That is very true. By the way, speaking of the Cavs, Swanson 79 asked us about Dotson on DraftKings. And so looking at his salary, he's $3,000 over on DraftKings.
I'm probably not going to do it. I mean, low 20s minutes, usage rate, decent enough, 17%. Went over 6 out last time, maybe gets a little boost out of that. I don't think you need to on this slate. I would rather go elsewhere.
We got a super chat in from Gene saying just cleared 11K on the MLB slate. Eric, can you take off your glasses off for good luck?
No, you're mean, Gene. That's bullying. Gene, that's bullying. I don't think Jason knows. Jason does not know what has happened. There it is.
Well, what happened?
Well, honestly, if you watched shows at Awesemo.com, you would understand what happened. But I'm pretty sure. Yeah, no, it's fine. You're a busy guy. You're covering all the MMA streets, which I have to get your opinion on some stuff. But anyway, we'll get back to that. I am a lot of upsets yesterday. That was a fun thing, at least in the early bit of the card, I think, for MMA yesterday. But it was
apparently I just need to go to basketball games on Saturday night and then just check my lineup at midnight and go, oh, it's a good night. All right, cool. Apparently that's what I just need to do from now on.
Yeah, I got somebody that got in my head about micro threading or something, saying that I had bushy eyebrows, and I took matters into my own hands, and I definitely will never do that again.
You gotta trust professionals when doing that.
Yeah, never again. Never again.
Yeah, I just let my barber just handle that. Let the professionals handle.
I didn't know how I felt about asking another man to trim my eyebrows at the moment in time, and now I know that it's a lot better than the alternative, which is doing it myself, which did not go well. I digress. We're ready.
I will tell you, being at that Raptors game last night, as I'm watching them, I'm like, these guys are going through the motions. Like, they know they don't have to worry about the play-in tournament, and they're just trying to get through the next week, and then they can get back to, I guess, somewhat of a normal life for the ones that have not decided to take up residence here in Tampa and have been living out of the JW Marriott for the past 5 months.
Yep. Well, I tell you what, it is very interesting. Tampa, God, that Toronto, that had to be a crazy year for all of those guys for sure. Can't be fun for anybody, but I guess playing in the NBA is probably better than most other things you can be doing in life. So maybe not feel terrible for them, but yeah, definitely having to pick up and get your whole family down to Florida, probably not the easiest year for any of them. Probably ready for it to be over more than anything. And I don't think they have any chance at this point in time to jump in. So they'll be vacationing in Canada soon.
I think that is what they're just waiting for. Or look, if their agents didn't tell them just to become Florida residents, it was probably the smart tax decision to make.
Over under. I don't know what's going on today, my dude, but yeah, living at the Holiday Inn for the last 5 months. Look at these lovely amenities that I have surrounding me. Gave me a TV to watch Rory McIlroy win a golf tournament, and the piano in the back. And yeah, no, they're treating me well here, chilling at the Holiday Inn.
Yeah, it's
not true, by the way, people. It's a nice apartment, okay?
It was good to not have to drive 90 minutes to go watch an NBA game. I'll say that.
Yeah. That was the best part. We'll get to a super chat here in the moment. I do want to bring up the Pelicans. Of course, we got the news a little while ago that Ingram and Steven Adams are both out. So I know that when I was putting together, was getting a lot of Marshall, obviously James Johnson. I know James Johnson is coming up high in ownership. As you look at the values on the Pelicans, do you want to get there tonight? Yeah, I think there was some confusion on earlier show, maybe with the Hernan Gomez situation, because Juancho, there's two of them. Juancho, Minnesota, out. Guillermo Hernan Gomez in. a very good play, I believe. I'm definitely going to be having some of him. He's in the starting lineup. We actually just got that starting lineup. So Ball, Bledsoe, Marshall, Johnson, and Hernan Gomez. That makes it pretty easy to like both of those pieces of value between James Johnson and Najee Marshall. I mean, they're going to jump up so meaningfully. And again, that's why I'm trying to force in one from some of the later stuff, just to kind of like prevent from getting super chalky. And I think there could be some interesting news, but both of their tags haven't adjusted for what this situation will be. No Ingram, no Zion. That is just so many shots and usage. They were going up against the 76ers, which is probably, I don't know, one of the worst matchups you can have, to one of the absolute best you can have against Charlotte. That's just such a different spot. So I think the ownership would be double what it is. Just get a bunch of them and kind of mix and match them. But I think Guillermo Hernan Gomez, I really like, is yet another phenomenal center play over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, James Johnson has to be your priority, sitting underneath 4K. I think the ownership is already starting to express that a little bit. Somebody that was popping up earlier for me was Wenyen Gabriel, and I do not want to play Wenyen Gabriel, but he is 3,300. If you were to get like mid-20s minutes, yeah, there could be a path. When we talk about all these guys between Cat and Luka Doncic and all these spend-ups that we want to get to on these late season slates, you got to figure out who are some of the cheaper pieces. And 3,300, I wouldn't mind if I got a couple of him. I definitely prefer him to somebody like Wesu Wundu, who I don't think can get there no matter what.
Yeah, of course, the Pelicans lineup is now in. Ball, Bledsoe, Marshall, Johnson, Hernan Gomez. The super chat that we got was about Jackson Hayes, 4,200 on DraftKings. Zach would like to know how you are feeling about him today.
I feel good about it. I mean, he was playing backup. He had an unbelievable game up against 76ers, but I think being able to avoid Joel Embiid for most of his rotations to get Dwight Howard, Dwight Howard's been very good still. Like, don't get me wrong. I think Dwight Howard's been everything Philly could possibly have wanted from him, playing 16, 18 minutes of like really good ball in limited time this year. Pretty impressed by him, and nobody talks about him because, again, we're just focused on DFS, but I've been quietly impressed by Dwight Howard. But Jackson Hayes, 4,200, hard not to have a little bit of exposure to him over on DraftKings. On FanDuel is really where it gets tough to like, I understand that he's at power forward there, and you at least have the ability to like roster him alongside James Johnson and some of these other top tier plays. I just don't know at 5K how much I want to get to. And he's grading out really, really well for us over at Awesemo, even in like 23 and a half minutes, sitting at just short of, he's 0.96 fantasy points per minute. So I don't completely hate it. You got to think that there's going to be some minutes upside there for him as well. If Guillermo gets in foul trouble, he's kind of the main recipient of that, playing backup 5. But I'm not going to get there crazy. I think I'll be at about the field there. I could see merit for like what he's projecting out for is just phenomenal over on FanDuel at this point in time. But I don't know. I have my apprehension that ownership might be even a little bit higher here. Not in the starting lineup might help some people not get there, but he played so well last game that I don't know if I want to chase it.
Of course, the news came in a little while ago about Alexander Walker available to play, but will be on a minutes restriction. And I want to say the tweets I saw News Guide retweeted out there was basically along the lines of he's coming off the bench, and it wasn't exactly a number thrown out there on how many minutes play. So probably proceed with caution there. Mention some super chats we got here from first up from Eytan. Says DK single entry, AD and Bagley or Luka and Hernan Gomez.
Different question on DK. AD single entry. Let me kind of piece it together because I mean I have exposure to all four. It's just a question of putting it together. I mean, I think it would have to be Luka Hernan Gomez for me. AD was awesome last game as well. He's going to see all the run that he possibly can here. I don't know. I just get worried that Phoenix can contain him a lot better than Portland could possibly contain him. 10-3 on DraftKings. I don't know. I know that Cleveland, that game, people can have blowout risk and do whatever there, but I'm going to be massively over top the field on Luka, and I feel pretty good about that. So Luka and Hernan Gomez for me.
Of course, Bagley just had an awful game on Friday. Because I remember as the question came in, I remember I had him rostered. I remember the next morning I looked at that and I go,
It's the Metu effect. It's the Metu effect. I mean, Chimezie Metu comes back, plays 12 minutes, and for whatever reason, that's enough to just completely scalp everything off the top for Bagley in production. And What happens when he doesn't get it going? I mean, he's almost not to Terrence Ross levels of like Terrence Ross early in Orlando, but like it is incredible how many times Terrence Ross would just like go out there and he would either put up 50 or put up 10. And it would just be like he either got hot, went out there and went like absolutely nuts in his first rotation, or he would basically see the bench for the rest of the game. And it was just kind of that, I don't know, it's not even a hot hand approach. It's just a they hate Marvin Bagley approach. And it was bound to happen eventually. I was happy to not be there too much on Friday. I didn't expect that bad of a performance, but Metu even just being active freaked me out enough that I got off of a lot of it there. And I think I'm going to continue to be light unless that ownership were to come down, which I don't see happening.
Charlotte Hornets starting lineup is in Ball, Rozier, McDaniels, Washington, and Biyombo. Mention a super chat FanDuel question here from Soul Dope says LaMelo, Kendrick, and Davis, or Luka, Marshall, and Baisley.
Oh, now we're talking. Now we're having fun. So, I mean, the Kendrick and Baisley side of it is really kind of what we're looking at. I mean, Doncic, Marshall, Baisley, I'm thinking about how that works out salary-wise. Is that actually pretty comparable? Davis is 10-3 if we're talking Anthony Davis. LaMelo's more expensive. Doncic, Marshall, and Baisley. What's Baisley?
Yeah.
He was at like around 6K on FD.
Williams on
7K
FanDuel
on DK.
is 42.
Yeah, I'm not going to get to any Baisley whatsoever. So I love the Doncic Marshall side of it. I love the LaMelo and Kenrit. Like, I would be the first one, but that's almost like a technicality because of how much I don't like Baisley today. And I like OKC, but I'm talking about like value pieces OKC. I'm not talking about playing anybody over 6K from OKC today. I have zero Baisley interest.
Of course, this is Live Before Lock, and we are presented and sponsored by No House Advantage. Be sure to check out the player prop contest they have over at No House Advantage. Of course, check out those projections we have over at Awesemo.com, those optimal lineups that we put together for you. And be sure to use the promo code Awesemo for a $20 first match deposit bonus. Beat your friends, not the house. Download in the App Store and win big with player props today. You're going to see Jordan's got there up on the screen. You can check out all those props and how we are seeing the projection of what we think where you should go a little more or, point value in terms of there. So be sure to check out No House Advantage. Let's get some questions over from Slack. Moneyback says, do you prefer Gary Harris or THT as a last guy in a DraftKings GPP?
I prefer THT Dynamite. Rock them up.
I would. Yeah, I'm on the other side of that one.
I know. I like the risk. Give me all the risk tonight. And if he ends up being out, then you pivot, and you should have plenty of spots to go to.
I mean, look, the Magic are such a bad team too. I
they're
mean,
bad.
It's just you look at there and. I look at that starting lineup tonight. I mean, look, Harris should have, he should have some opportunities, but when I look at that Magic team,
0.64 DraftKings points per minute here on the year, right around 0.65 here over the last month, 16.5% usage last time out, 10-point loss to Charlotte in 30 minutes. Doesn't really rebound the ball whatsoever. Has one game over 3 rebounds in his last, I don't know, all season long, basically. Okay, he's had 2 games all season long as I'm scrolling through where he's had more than 3 rebounds. So there's 0 double-double interest. He's had 1 game of over 4 assists in the last, that's his high for the season as well. I have no desire to be playing a chalky Gary Harris. I mean, he's 10% right now over on DK. I think compared to Taylor Horton Tucker, who, as you said, could be a guy that could get relied on for 1/3 of the ownership. That in low 20s minutes has already proven an upside. 27.3% usage against Toronto in that 7-point loss. Ended up having that 4-point win against Denver. Only played 21 minutes, but 28.5% usage, 4 for 7 from the field. Had 5 turnovers. Didn't look that fantastic in it, but possible minutes upside there. Yeah, I'm going to take Taylor Horton Tucker.
A team that we have not, we talked a little bit about the Bulls when it came to Levine and Vooch. Detroit on the other side of that equation. the amount of players that are just simply not playing tonight. You as I just look at my spreadsheet in front of me, you've got Bay, Grant, and Stewart are we expect to be in. Plumlee, Joseph, Jackson are all out. I know there was some news on Detroit a second ago that I saw come across.
I didn't see anything.
I thought I saw it was
I saw Daniel Tice got ruled out, so he was not expected to go. We got him. I did not see anything for Detroit yet.
I thought I saw. I'll have to find it.
Okay.
But nothing concrete on Detroit yet. But we do, just from the 5:30 injury report, Plumlee, Joseph, Jackson, among those that are not going for Detroit. Does anything stick out to you, Detroit? Maybe outside of Sadiq Bey?
No. Isaiah Stewart, you can play at 6,100 on FanDuel. Got to wait on, Jeremy Grant is the guy that we got to wait on the news for. And you want to talk about why I'm looking at these late games. Detroit's another team that could have some really sneaky value to get exposure to right now. If the news breaks the right way, Servetus would be an all right guy to maybe take some shots on. Got up to 24 minutes, could see more. They're not trying to win basketball games. That's a fact. And there's enough bodies there that it's not as interesting, but you got to get Jeremy Grant out for me to really want to have interest up and down this lineup here, which we do not have the news on yet, I believe.
Yeah, I'm just looking at ownership on Detroit here to see if there's anybody. Yeah, the highest owned 8%. So there's
Crazy.
not ownership coming that way.
They have enough bodies back now is kind of the issue. And you get some of these either shorthanded teams or, we don't have like somebody extremely shorthanded outside of New Orleans on this slate, which is why the ownership is flooding that direction. But it should kind of flood that direction. That makes a lot of sense. If you're building optimally for this slate, you're playing James Johnson, you're playing Najee Marshall, you're playing Guillermo Hernan-Gomez, you're playing Jackson Hayes. Like those four are just so cheap. So you got to figure out like, how can I get different in a tournament? How can I mix my exposures around? You can go massively overweight to all of those guys. That makes a lot of sense. But I think that that's what some of the top 150 players do in a lot of these spots. And so for me, I'm going to try to wait on some news coming up. I think that we could have some interesting pieces from Detroit based on that starting lineup, based on Jeremy Grant getting out. We could have some interesting stuff based on Alex Caruso or Taylor Horton Tucker, who are both questionable, and figuring out how that is going to pan out and where those minutes can go to. Because you could get a guy like Ben McLemore as one of the craziest plays on this slate. I know that sounds really stupid to say out loud right now because it's not like he's popping up anywhere. But if you get Caruso and you get Taylor Horton Tucker out for whatever reason, like, that's the guy that you got to kind of be plugging in to play some point guard minutes for that team. It's going to get really, really hairy. And yeah, I want to be over-invested to some of this evening stuff, including OKC.
The lineup just came in for the Mavs. So we've got Luka, Hardaway Jr., Finney Smith, Richardson, and Cauley Stein.
Okay. Yeah, they've been doing the Cauley Stein thing, trying to peg who's going to go off in that between the two guys. For that, I guess they both played pretty darn well 2 games ago would have been, but Cauley Stein started the last 3 now. Been pretty good the last 2, 24.5 and 20, 21 minutes, 23 minutes. That's been pretty decent. Dwight Powell had started, a bunch of games before that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games previous to it. Now it's been him starting the last 3, but Powell has seen more minutes, 29, 27, 22. It got limited down a little bit, but part of that had to do with the 20-point blowout there that they had against Cleveland. Having Kleba out it was a nice thing to see right out of the gate here. So getting Kleba out, having Porzingis continue to be out, I think they're going to continue to be kind of mixing and matching between those two. I really like at under 1%, having 4,300 Dwight Powell. There's a 28 minutes upside there. We've seen it now twice in the last 3 games. Is it really, really inconsistent and difficult to figure out? Yeah, it is. But at 3,500, he was 15% owned in the $20 2 slates ago. So I do think that there is merit to under 1%. If you're making 150 lineups, having Powell in your portfolio and making sure that you have a group set up not to get him and Cauley Stein together. I expect Cauley Stein at 3,600 not to really garner much ownership whatsoever. This slate has much, much better value, but having a little bit of him would also make some sense.
Of course, one of the things we always like to profile here at Awesemo.com is our Awesemo Hall of Fame and talk about some of the players that have scored big. Congrats to Dabber taking down first place in a UFC contest last night. Also over there, we can see some NBAs coming in as well. P. Hanley taking down second place, walk away with 10K, and also finishing in 8th place with 750. And then there you see the boss man showing what he was able to do. Of course, download that Awesemo profile pic at awesemo.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Awesemo HOF. And when you place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 entries, you'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So kudos to everyone out there using all the great premium tools and content we have here at awesemo.com to fill out those lineups there. We mentioned some other teams that maybe we really haven't really touched on the Suns at all. We talked a lot about the Lakers in that side of the game. We know no Cameron Johnson, but everyone else is a go here. How are you evaluating Phoenix tonight?
I don't really love anybody from this team outside of taking shots on Devin Booker, and Chris Paul has been phenomenal. Like, don't get me wrong, but 7,800 on DraftKings. If you want to have a little bit, we have seen that. I mean, 69 points is such an outlier in that Cleveland game. It went to overtime. He had already gotten there before overtime, so I'm not taking anything away from him. But now at 7,900 on this slate, I don't think he's got the kind of ceiling on a consistent basis. He's sitting in that mid-range of 7,800. I think I'd just rather take all of that exposure and turn it into Luka Doncic, turn it into some of these other pieces, like these other ceiling guys on this slate. I would much rather just put it towards Delon Wright for $200 less. Just take all of that and flood it his direction. Of course, the ownership is also there. So Chris Paul could be your low owned tournament play, but not a guy that I'm getting to in any kind of a meaningful way.
Just looking at our most recent update on ownership came down just a couple of minutes ago. And one of the players that sticks out to me at the top of this list, and it's a player that we haven't talked about. We talked a lot about Cat. Deangelo Russell seeing some ownership here.
Just hate it. I will be underneath the field drastically. He's coming in around 30%. I am just underneath 1/3 of that. I get why you want to go that direction, but I have to think that Minnesota is now starting to realize, hey, we got to lose basketball games. He started the last 2 games playing alongside Cat there, playing alongside Anthony Edwards, both of them big usage hogs as well. I find it hard to want to be paying 7,600 for Deangelo Russell on this slate. It just goes towards that same deal where if I'm going to be playing 3 or 4 pieces in the 7K range, I basically am not going stars and scrubs. I'm more balanced in that direction. And I would rather, if I'm going to play 1 or 2 pieces in the 7K range, Mo Bamba, such a better play for $600 less. I know they're different positions on DraftKings, but just talking about it from a salary perspective, how they fit together, I would rather, I'm going to be lighter on Deangelo Russell. I'm going to be lighter on Marvin Bagley. I think that both of them just are very boom bust type options. And I get Marvin Bagley that we love him. He stands out well projected, but you got to also look at what that downside is. And having Luke Walton as your basketball coach definitely puts some uncertainty into the slate. So at 30% ownership there, that we're getting on Deangelo Russell for Minnesota. And then the 27% ownership we're getting for Marvin Bagley. Both of those are guys that I'm going to be under the field on.
As I look at ownership, I'm still surprised about the AD ownership, just because I firmly expect he's going.
Yeah, I'm surprised by it too.
I would just look at number. I'm like, I would have thought it'd be, much higher than what it is. I'm really surprised by that. It's just, this is I got to imagine for what the Lakers have to do here. It's a great spot for AD, especially when you look at what else is going to be on the floor with him.
Nothing. Like, there's a legitimate possibility that there is nothing on the floor next to him. I think there was nothing on the floor next to him in Portland, and we saw 39 minutes out of the guy. What you're basically fading is the fact that this game gets wonky. Like, if you get Caruso, THT, and it just gets wonky, you're not going to Anthony Davis is going to bury you because he's going to play 25 minutes. They're going to not play him in the fourth quarter. They're going to say health is the priority, which is what I think they should have been saying all along. Like, screw it. If you end up in the play-in game at this point in time, if you can't win, if you're going to end up as a 7 or 8 seed at least, which it mathematically, I think is probably the best case scenario for them, regardless of how depleted they are, they're going to win 1 or 2 games coming down the stretch here. But if you can't win one of two games against those teams with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, you probably don't deserve to be in the playoffs anyway. So there's definitely downside to Anthony Davis, but there is definite smash potential if this game stays intact, if the Lakers can kind of like find a way to be competitive. And their best chance for that is obviously going through Anthony Davis, who's a top 5 player in the league when healthy.
I'm just saying, when that play-in game happens, right now it would be Lakers Warriors, a 7-8 game.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to just be a fly on the wall in the luxury suite of the television executives and the NBA top executives of what is going through their mind of what happens if the Lakers don't play themselves into the playoffs.
Well, then they get Steph Curry, which isn't the worst case scenario for them. I think getting Steph Curry in the playoffs period is probably a good thing for them. Here's what it comes down to is the Lakers don't have much else. They've tried to bolster their team. Harrell wasn't it. Andre Drummond sure isn't it. There's they've made a lot of really interesting, questionable moves. I thought Kevin Love was a piece that they were going to find a way to go out and get. He has played with LeBron, would fit in well in the 4, can play multiple, can play some backup 5 if need be. But Anthony Davis at the 5 has been their best lineup for 2 years. And we've seen that. Yeah. Like you can see that as a regular basketball fan. Why are you bringing in 2 centers to try to bolster your team? That never made any sense to me.
Yeah, it's just AD wants to play at the 4, but their best lineups are when he's at the 5. Of course, we are looking for the latest in breaking news. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Awesemo NBA. Of course, also be sure to follow our guy News God at newsgod_DFS, as he's always giving us the latest news and notes. Let's finish a super chat here from Devontae Moore. He says, who are your top plays for center on FanDuel? I like Holmes, he says.
Moses Brown is my highest owned center on FanDuel today at coming in around 2.6%. I have 40. I have 40 lineups. He is in 40% of my center lineups. I don't know what I'm thinking. I may or may not have had a mimosa. No, I did not have a mimosa today for Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, Mom, if you're watching, by the way. But letting it be known, I definitely think Moses Brown and Guillermo Hernan-Gomez are 2 centers that I'm going to be well over the field on. And then Mo Bamba is 3rd for me. I'm coming in just a little bit below the field. You can't play everybody, but I think that there is just to get a different lineup construction where I'm playing more Luka, playing more of Devin Booker in the shooting guard spot to pay up at that spot. I think that that's kind of the path that I'm going, so that I'm kind of breaking the mold of lineup construction. So not paying down at center, or paying down at center rarely is like the optimal way of going, but I think that they have more expressed upside than what their ownership is showing right now.
Mentioned another question. RJ Hampton, Bledsoe, or Rubio?
Nate Rojas, I called my mom already. Stop it. I already called my mom. She got her flowers. She's happy. But what was that one more time?
RJ Hampton,
okay.
Bledsoe, or Rubio?
Bledsoe. Definitely Bledsoe. And do I feel great about saying absolutely Bledsoe? No. I heard the way that it came out of my mouth. I didn't like it, but it's the opportunity. 0.8 fantasy points per minute. Sees a boost to that rate on the year with all these guys off. I mean, somebody's got to be chucking shots. 33.5-minute projection. Look at his last 4. He's been pretty consistent. This is as consistent as you will see Eric Bledsoe because of the opportunity that's going to come his way. I think against Charlotte, you're seeing a very different matchup here than you actually saw against Philly. I really like Eric Bledsoe today.
If you do have any other questions, be sure to line those up. Another one we got to over Slack. Who do we pivot if we get Maledon out?
So this has been the major part of my process trying to figure out this morning what's going to happen, because I think that there's going to be 1 or 2 pieces from OKC that can win you a tournament. I think Kenrich Williams probably makes sense as the first guy. So he's been seeing his minutes get limited here. They basically were like, oh, you're going to be out of the rotation. Then he was back in the rotation, and it's kind of interesting. But the guy who actually sees the highest assist rate on the floor amongst all of those pieces, I think you got to be looking his way if you get Maledon out. I think you could see him mid-20s minutes. Had 5 assists last time out in limited minutes as well. I think Svi Mikhailuk becomes number 2. He's the guy who actually went out and won somebody a tournament last slate. Feel good about Svi being somebody who can get inserted and have some usage, but his assist rate, I mean, he's not ever going to be a guy who's going to go out and quantifiably put those up for you. So I think he kind of sticks out as somebody who might see a couple bit more minutes, like a little bit more minutes upside for him there. But they have enough bodies. Like for me, it just really comes down to who can play point guard for this team. I think they probably have a combination of like a number of ways that they can handle it. Going to Popcorn Machine, looking at their last game, you had Kenrich Williams come in right at the 243 mark, started to play a little bit of that backup point guard. He came in for just a little bit after Teo Maledon. Svi was actually the guy who subbed in for him at the same time with Jalen Horde. Looking as they got absolutely obliterated. So that started the third quarter. I mean, it just became Jalen Horde as the other piece that you could take a look at. But I would much rather, I think playing the point guard position, Kenrich Williams, and then Svi would kind of be number 2 on my list.
Of course, we got another super chat in here from Sunflower. Says narrative play, Lonzo and LaMelo in the same lineup.
No, I mean, why not? You could have a ball. You could have the what was it before? Bridges. You could win with who else? There's another combo of pieces where Rinpack and I one day on the Slate Star, we just built like on FanDuel. You could have gone ball. Bridges, and there was a way of like filling it out entirely. Like Brown, I think was possibly one with Moses Brown and Troy Brown Jr. was a play. What are you mouthing? Say it louder. Say it for all the people to hear. They need to hear your lovely voice, Jordan Klein. Porter Jr. and Porter Jr. There it is. Thank you so much. I knew there was another one. You could have played all 8 of them in the same lineup, and then on FanDuel you're screwed because you have to find one other piece. But whatever.
Yeah, the only one was like, are you trying to put the Holiday brothers in one lineup together?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Holiday. You could do it that way. Holiday Row. Yeah. Way too many song bridges today. I apologize to the people. This is not a good look for me.
Of course, we got about 5 minutes here before lock time. I just put in my final CSV there for my 20 max that I'm doing here tonight. I'm finding myself going more Luka than I'm going to AD tonight, but I do. AD is just one of those guys that I want to have in there just because I look, the ownership is the thing I really stick out to of how low it is with AD.
Why not both?
Yeah, I mean, the question is like, you know, if you could put Luka, AD, and Mo Bamba in a lineup together, but then of course now it's a stars and scrub type approach.
Yeah, I mean that's what you should, I think, optimally looking at doing. I mean, Delon Wright is a piece in the mid range. I think you just absolutely have to have exposure to. Just has shown way too much upside playing point guard here. High 30s minutes. I will just kind of like live and die with being way overweight on him. Jared Vanderbilt freaks me out now that he's like over 4K over on DraftKings as I'm just like getting all of my finished products in for lineups. But I'm still double the field on him there. But yeah, for me, it really comes down to if Luka has a bad game, I'm not going to have a good slate. And I'm just fine with that. Like, I think for the most part, he has the most upside of anybody on this slate, him and Cat. You could go 1-2 for them. But I just feel so much better about Luka than I do Cat because of, you know, he doesn't have to share the floor with Anthony Edwards and Deangelo Russell out there chucking now, who have kind of capped him a little bit here from time to time. But yeah, I mean, between Bamba and Wright, I'm finding different ways to get away from that 7K range. We just got Kyle Kuzma ruled out too. Very last second here. Obviously that game doesn't happen for a long time, but that is a nice piece to have out of that game. That is a big deal.
But you know, now I'm really looking at it as much as I have of THT. That is news that I am liking in that scenario. You know, I was just looking at my cash lineup, and I do have Mo Bamba, Luka, and AD together. The thing with when you look at Luka tonight, I think the question ultimately comes down to is how many minutes do you think he plays? If you think he plays under 30 minutes, I totally understand why you decide not to go that way. But if you think that Luka can get 30, 32, 33 minutes, I don't know how you don't look at that.
Exactly. And that's the risk I'm willing to take on this slate, because I think his floor is still better than most people's median outcomes. And so for today, for this slate specifically, I'm happy to just take an overweight approach and live with the results.
Mention some quick questions here before we get out of here. Thad Young or Bagley?
Weirdly, weird as it is, I think I like Thad Young more, especially where their ownerships are at. Thad Young is coming in at what, 24? I mean, he's still coming up with some meaningful ownership over on FanDuel right now. But I have quite a bit of Thad Young. I like that play a lot.
Terrence Davis or RJ Hampton for a DraftKings GPP.
RJ Hampton.
Yeah. Yeah, just when it comes to the Magic, they're just a team that Mo Bamba, to me, obviously we've talked about that, and ownership shows what he is going to do there. Before we kind of get out of here, is there a player that you look at and you look at the field and go, man, I'm just going to be so under that?
Marvin Bagley. Does it feel good? No, it feels absolutely terrible, but it worked out last time. So, let's just chase the thing that worked out last time, right? Isn't that the way DFS works? No? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I'm going to be up late tonight watching a OKC Sacramento game and going, why am I watching this?
Yeah, because you don't have it's not that you don't have anything better to do. We certainly have better things to do than that. But for the most part, it's just what we do. Like, we watch these terrible games because they matter so much to us. There's really no way
living
around
on the
it.
East and living on the East Coast. Like, even like you guys living on the West Coast, those games are on a little earlier than here in the East Coast. When I'm up till midnight, 1 a.m. going, why am I watching this game? And then I'm like, oh yeah, because I've got like 6 players in this game.
Yep. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. Can't wait to watch Sacramento and OKC tonight. I'm very stoked. Coming to you live from the Who Cares Dome. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. When it comes to like those type of games, I'm just hoping that the announcers are entertaining.
Rishi knew, Chalkmaster, get your lineups in. I absolutely was scrambling there again. Not even going to lie. It was, I don't know why I keep doing this to myself.
As you're rolling over your left, I go, I was like, did he unplug his mic? Like, I got my lineups in. I'm all good. I'm good with this one. Hopefully everyone has a good night here. Of course, as always, appreciate you checking us out here at Awesemo.com. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button as you exit. Of course, if you're not subscribed to Awesemo, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. So good luck to everyone tonight. Of course, keep it locked here at Awesemo.com for all the latest DFS coverage. Good night, everybody.